So this is a track from my album called Shadow of You, and a lot of you were actually very curious in how to, guys like me and Seven Lions and AU5 and all, plenty of other artists do the super saw effect, and it's basically this track. I think it will explain that process probably in the best way I can. I'll do my best at least. Before we go to the super saws, we're gonna start with the intro. This is basically a set of rhythm-defining Reese's, which basically is supposed to be DJ-friendly, hopefully. And how I did it is, kick is audio kick. It's right here. Exported it previously from a separate project. There's not much on it, just some fat filter which cuts off the low end a tiny bit. Gets rid of the high end because originally it had a bit of a click on top. The bass in this is a mixture of certain samples I've done. This is all massive stuff. I had to re-export them also from all different sorts of projects. This is without any inserts on it. We got the bass, which goes sort of like this. It's just a sort of like a deep grungy Reese from Massive. What I put on it is camel fat, which is probably my favorite go-to thing when it comes to distorting and amplifying a certain sound. We got distortion here. And thing I love about camel fat is the BP filter. It allows it to really push out the... It's similar to EQ, but it kind of works with the distortion very well. I can't describe it really, it's just, you just have to hear it. It's like automated by this track right here. This is the camel filter low end, low knob right here. It's automated so that it starts with a really high, so you can hear this like, it starts like distorted high pass, even though it's not essentially a high pass. So this is just a really pitched up massive here also. The reason I exported it is again because of a really crappy PC I just had back in the day when I did this, and it just couldn't handle too many instruments at once. So you heard a lot of echo on this, which was obviously Fat Filter Timeless, which is right here. I've been using a lot of Fat Filter stuff. Actually not in this track, but maybe I'll show you some other tracks some other time. But for now, we got Fat Filter Timeless, which is pretty precise. Like this thing goes on for ages. You can set the tail, and it just goes on with after the tail is gone after a certain time. It just tends to cut the low end in this case, so you can hear the low end is gone after some time, and it keeps pushing it towards the higher frequencies. Then we got the initial fat filter, which just cuts some of the low end from it, because we also have a sub bass track, which is made from Massive right underneath it, which is just a normal sub. And let's say when it comes to the bass, basically it's a lot of camel fat filtering. Then we're moving to the further part, which is this. Lots of melodies going on in this, but that's basically what I wanted to do when it comes to this kind of tempo. 110 glitch hop, it never really happens, especially when you look at the Beatport charts and stuff like that. The glitch hop over there is always kind of funky, jazzy. What I wanted to make is very trancey glitch hop with lots of euphoric vibes. I think it really lacks. Basically, the reason I make music is to have something to listen to sometimes if it doesn't exist, obviously. So these kind of tracks, I always wanted to hear it in this kind of tempo. We've got lots of synths. Let's go to the synths. We got an Omni plug, which is made from Omnisphere again, because Omnisphere just took way too much out of my CPU, and I just had to export it into a stem. But it goes like this, just like a plug, and it's being automated with the cutoff originally. But obviously I can't show it because it's stand out to audio. So the second one in this synth ensemble, we've got a little bit of a massive patch right here. It's very simple actually. It's got the tube on it, the classic tube, which actually does a lot of the work. Without it, it's just ultra quiet. you have to really crank it up. And what it is basically a sine form, and all that happens with this automation, let me close this up. All that happens with this automation is basically the envelope, the decay is basically getting longer, as you can hear here, see here? So basically, that's the simplest stuff without the tube. With the tube basically adds a lot of the beef, like basically 90% of the beef. And then back to normal. In the second part of the intro, we got the third thing going on, which is this. Also, just typical massive stuff. I think as long as the little melody, these are all 16s, obviously, which is in 110. These sound very slow, but they complement the first one very well, I think, when it comes to harmonics and complementary. And again, what it is basically just this sound is actually a saw wave, which I want to keep it the opposite of the previous one. Has the same effect, also a C tube, and that's all it does. It does the same thing without the C tube. It sounds like this. You can barely hear it, obviously. C tube does half the job. And same thing that happens. The envelope, as you can see, same kind of automation, and all it does is just it makes it a bit more drastic at this part. Next thing is we got the Nexus this time. You cannot say no to Nexus, especially when, I don't understand how people tend to create their own super saws where you've got this ready. Like, why would you bother yourself? Why would you overcomplicate things when you have a Nexus available and you can screw around with it the way you want and just have a perfect super saw ready for you like this? So, as long as you layer it and compress it and EQ it properly and make, the phasing right, and you keep it nice in stereo, you get a nice ensemble of a couple of different arpeggiators like these, or leads, certain kind of things. So as long as you keep it nice and steady, I don't think it matters what you use really. In this case, we have the transy thing, which also in this case we are actually automating the cutoff, which is right here. Simple stuff, just normal cheesy super saw lead kind of thing. As you can probably tell, lots of these tracks, when you look at the MIDI signal, they don't have anything happening when the actual kick happens, as you can hear. So only once the reese and the kick is done, then you hear the ensemble, so that they basically don't collide. Because even if if you had a signal of a certain like a certain harmony on the kick and the snare, on the kick and the reese, it wouldn't sound as powerful as the kick and the reese itself. So that's why I wanted to keep it separate, just like here. And then they start on the second fourth of the bar. So next thing in the synth ensemble, we got the Harmer, which I only use. I only started using it very recently, and it basically what it does here is I started actually with a super saw, which you can tell if I automate this back up. It starts as a super saw originally. However, in this case, basically all I did was just turn the pluck down. It's basically the time of the pluck. What I really like about Harmer is that all these plucks sound very organic. Like if you trim down any sort of synth that you pre-make here and then trim the pluck back down, you can tell the transients, like they sound really as if each one of these plucks was being strummed on a guitar by someone. It's at least to me it sounds very organic. So that's what I really liked about Harmer compared to, for example, Massive. If I made a similar sound in Massive, I don't think each one of these transients would sound as organic as it would here. Lastly, we got the choir, which is also a Nexus kind of thing. It's in the voices. We got a classical choir, which I really like, especially when you want to fill up a super saw lead, which we're gonna get to in a moment. This is what I really like to do when it comes to super saws, and a lot of people think that basically when you want to create a super saw during like this pumpy sidechainy kind of really melodic vibe during a dubstep track or something, you only need one super saw or something. How to make a super saw with just one instrument? That's just undoable basically. There's plenty of layers you have to take into account. One of those layers I think works really well which works really well I think is the choir. As long as you sidechain it nicely and you compress it so that it balances out the actual super saws, which we'll get to in a second, it really adds this organic vibe to the whole lead structure, because otherwise you would just have a really raw digital sound. But this, these are actual recordings. hear these changes going on. And what's good is that the Nexus allows you to modify the cutoff, obviously, so you just, you can have it as prominent or as, piano as possible. So you do this. And that's about it when it comes to the intro. Now we're getting to the build-up. So we got this melody chord progression going on, which is basically when I make tracks, this is what I start with. Either it's the drop, like a very naughty bit, or I start with the chord progression, which then is like complexified into more elaborate things. But first of all, it has to be a chord progression like this. For example, this is the first synth in here. We got the Omni, which I also had to export because of my PC's lack of performance. And this is just a simple ARP modulated with the cutoff at the very end, so it goes up. So this is the chord progression I started with for the whole track, and then it starts with then we move on to Nexus again. We got something I really like. I love this synth. I don't know why it sounds so organic, as if someone's like clicking on bottles. I love this. That's why I just had to use it in this track. We got the arpeggios bullet time, really great. Even though I barely touched it, like it's all I put on it, as you can see right here, is just the maximizer just to keep it in place so it doesn't go overboard, because it has a lot of delay on it, so some of the tail from the previous hit might leak onto the next hit, so sometimes it just adds additional volume which you may not want. We got one more Nexus here which I also love. This is the epic pad is what I call it. It's just the very, very emotional stuff. This is all in the stock. Basically, all it does is all these harmonics. I think the actual sounds, the timbres of these sounds actually change the higher the pitch, and I'm pretty confident that's how they did it. They actually recorded separate sounds when it comes to. Now we have an actual violin and like little glitter kind of sound, like really shiny stuff. I really love that. So. Basically, I use Nexus a lot, which is, it is the easy way of doing things, but honestly, why would you want to overcomplicate stuff? So I think it works. The reason why it sounds so great, because it's Nexus, and it's basically the single layer pads. It's called the ambient pad, it's basically the first ambient pad, and what I like about it is just that it keeps evolving the more you turn up the cutoff, which I always like to do when it comes to, breakdowns and keeping the I like the track emotional, especially when you're dealing with melodies like this. So you got this evolving pad, and then it turns to it's like you can actually hear these additional instruments all of a sudden appearing the higher the pitch goes. It always seems interesting to me, and that's why I really like it. It seems very natural and like alive. Lastly, I think in this part, apart from the obvious, white noises and effects that we got right here, it's just white noise on reverb. It's nothing special. We got the square blobs. This is the massive, basically just some square blobs, which all it is just this. It cannot get any simpler than this. Right between the square and the square and the saw, we got the depth filter, which just basically gets rid of some of the high end during this little evolution of the synth. Oh, actually, and then it gets higher and higher. You can see the depth cutoff just getting up. Simple stuff. All I applied on it was just some imager, because originally it wasn't as wide as I wanted it to be, so I wanted to crank up these two bands a bit wider in stereo. And it really complements the rest of the stuff, I think, pretty well. So it's like... Now let's get to the main part, which is the vocal. This is one of the things that turns out to be a happy accident in the end, because all I did was basically take a couple of snippets from certain sample packs. You can see I chopped them up in completely different ways. All that I applied is a couple of things over here. We got the fat filter, which obviously gets rid of, it's a female vocal, so gets rid of everything from below 200 hertz. Mod Machine, which adds this is a stock Cubase plugin, loved it ever since, because it does this cool EQ sort of automation as the as the tail progresses. And it adds and subtracts from the high end and low end. So that's the kind of thing I liked, and it was just easy to learn, so I keep using it until today. And then we got the final fat filter cue. I don't know why I did two, whatever. And all it does is, I think it's actually later on, it's right here. Oh, this is all the automation for the track. We got the frequency of the insert number 7, which is this. And it basically just, second part of the track, it just, gets rid of the high end of the vocal. It's a bit distorted, I actually should fix that. But let's come back here. Here we've got the vocal, which is a chopped up vocal. Apart from that, this is the vocals channel track, bus, in other words, which basically takes a couple of different tracks into it and applies inserts in a global way. So the only thing on it is just this one track, because I had a couple of more, I think, but not at the moment. I still have to look into it. But anyway, this one has pitch correct, which is something I really like in Cubase. When it comes to changing the format, you can set it to be male or female. In this case, we were dealing with a female. So the format originally, it's this 34 shift. This is a pretty harsh format shift, which basically changes, a woman, makes her younger, makes her into a girl. So you can tell the difference. Tail is pretty long. Anyway, 34 is where we were at. And all it is basically just glitched out vocals. It was a happy accident that the track is called Shadow of You. It never even occurred to me that this vocal is actually singing Shadow of You. It was just snippets of all different kinds of sounds, but you can hear it here. And that's what stuck with me, and I just chose this title. It's a complete accident, but I kind of like accidents like that. So in this case, when it comes to the chopping, as you can see, everything is done by hand. Like, I haven't used any glitch sort of inserts or anything like that, even though I love Deep Blue Glitch, and I'm going to talk to you about it later. This one basically just everything by hand, and I've been doing this because this is basically the clearest and the most efficient way to do things for me. Afterwards, we got this. It is applied here, but it's turned off, so I should probably just get rid of it. Studio Chorus, which is basically what makes it sound more robotic. If we can hear it without also the mod machine, which is on the other track. Sounds raw. With the Studio Chorus, obviously sounds more robotic. Yeah. Next one is Isotope Imager, again to widen the sound, because originally, as you can see, some of these snippets are stereo, some of these are mono, so I just figured I have to make them all stereo because they are on a stereo track. So, ooh, these are actually cranked up all the way up. Well, let's see what they look like. Pretty freaking wide. I'm not sure if I should keep it like this. I'll work on it later. Roomworks, basically just some tailing, which is actually bypassed right now. But yeah, this will be turned on afterwards, I think. Yeah, it's somewhere. Compassion, because as you can see from the waveform, this is another thing that I love about this DAW, is that you can see every waveform 100% of the time. So you can see what's louder, what's more quiet. You don't have any sort of different sequences where all the waveforms are hidden. So that's what I like about Cubase, and that's why I stuck with it all the time. You can see that this is super quiet, this is loud in stereo, this is super loud. So I wanted basically to keep them equal without having to do all this stuff by hand, obviously. So we got a Compassion, which basically takes all the threshold all the way down to minus 38. Ratio 6, makeup, makes it basically like a sausage. Oh, it's a bit glitchy, but I don't know why the glitchiness. The build-up starts here. Yeah, before the drop, this is the build-up. All that is just, this is actually in the phase. This is when I had the phase of not inputting drums into MIDI. I was basically doing all the drums by hand because I've been doing this since 4 years ago. So I want to have complete control of each sound and how to pitch it, how to do, if you input a certain sound or a certain drum hit into a, beat machine or something like a sampler, it doesn't allow you to do everything you want. You want to be able to have full control. So this snare, for example, This is from my drums pack. I've done, this is like a layered snare of what I've done previously of, I think from my previous EP. This is just got some, 200 Hertz boost right here on the Fab Filter Pro Q. You can see this is the pre and post, so you can see the previous, how much low end the snare actually had before it was cut. It was all the way here. So there's actually 2 snares on this one track, which is again why my style is very messy when it comes to production. So this is just a clap. That's also from like a clap snap. This is where is it from? Actually, I think this is from another track from the album which I've done previously. So you're gonna hear it on the album unless you've already heard it. So luckily they're peaking at the exact same hertz. Not exact, but they're basically oscillating around 200. This is, so we got them right here. Just some glitches I've done. As I said before, I'm just doing a couple of stretching out, stretching in, time remapping. So all these are just basically cuts from all these different kinds of tracks I've done before, and just you can get these effects like this with like glitchiness. All that's applied on this track is actually just the Fab filter, which gets rid of the low end. I love to work in audio basically, so that's why it's also crude. You cannot really get any insight into all these kind of sounds because I'm not doing it to show anyone. I'm just doing it to make it work. So that's why it's all audio. And way over here, I missed something. This is the kicks that come in right after this build-up part. Sorry. Kick. This kick. Can't remember where I got it from. I honestly can't remember. I think this is a Damage. I used to work with Damage on Contact, and I think this is where the kick came from, and I had to sample it from some other project. Anyway, let's just applied some Fab Filter Pro Q. Not much, not even any compression, because I think it sounds good. Lots of noise. Here we have the most interesting parts probably in here would be just the riff that I've showed you before, which is again modified with the Camel Fat low filter, and all it does is just changes a little bit. There's a little bit of a 16 thing, 32 thing going on. Couple of effects right underneath. Interesting parts from this build up. I don't know. There's not much that's interesting. We've got a MIDI riser, for example. This is how I do rises in Massive. This is what I've always done, and I think it's like an efficient way to do it, and it sounds pretty good. It sounds good enough to me, so I just do it. We got Massive that is set to monophone, which basically legato trailer. Just legato. The pan position is set so that it's two unison of voices that sound pretty wide when it comes to the pan position. All it does is basically gliding from C sharp to C sharp. Yeah, this track is in C sharp, and here in the oscillator we got the time, which basically is pretty high, and it just about ends when it's supposed to end on the high C sharp. So we're dealing with this. We got some reverb here, and as you can see on this track over here, there's flanger, which also does a lot of the job. It's you know what flanger does. We got Fab filter, which gets rid of the low end because it has to, because that would have been a mess. And vibrato, which at this point is at a constant depth of 28 and rate per 10. So as you can see, without any inserts on this particular riser track, and no effect, no reverb in the Massive, it just sounds very crude and raw. It's just a normal ply saw that's just on the oscillator at this position right here, and it just glides up. I just wanted to make it a bit more organic. Maybe not organic, but a bit more lively than this. So basically reverb comes first. And then we got the flanger, which adds a little bit of this like gliding. It's a very pretty slow flanger if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the rate is 0.3, so it's like, you can hear it sort of gliding. And vibrato, which is a constant vibrato of 26 at the rate 10, and speciality at 63. So it's like, it works for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna get rid of the vibrato because how it sounds without it. Nope, I prefer it with vibrato. Maybe I was used to that sound already. You know, when you make a track for such a long time and then you listen to it, and wait, that seems different, which equals in your head to that seems bad. So you want to keep it as, you know, as original sounding as it, you know, when it used to sound back when you started making this track, and then you sleep on the track, and then for like a month, and then you listen to it again, and something changed, and you're just like, oh no, we have to make it back to the way it was. So that's why I have to keep the vibrato here, just so my brain doesn't overload. So we're getting to the main part of the track, which is finally to talk about super saws and how they're layered, because a lot of people have been asking me this in various AMAs, and this is just, we've seen various of YouTube videos, just people trying to remake this sound, which is very, very simple, believe it or not. This is the drop, basically. So we got these basically euphoric glitch hub, which is something I haven't really heard much of before, so that's why I decided to make it. And we got, first of all, we got just a crude little saw wave here with the bass, which I made previously and I exported it. This is a sustain that I made with Massive. You can see it's the volume automation, drops down to 0. The reason why I start the choir right before the drop actually starts, like you can see 1/4 of a bar is actually, this is where the choir starts, the actual chord, and it's trimmed down to 0, is because this particular choir takes exactly like maybe a second or a half a second to evolve before it's actually in full-blown volume. So that's why I tend to start stuff like that earlier, and then just bring the volume back up when it's needed. So at this point, since it's already sidechained, because you can see it goes to the sidechain bus, that means the volume is going to be ducked with whatever kick and the snare does. So all that's needed is just to trigger the choir whenever it's needed. So that's just my way. That's just my way of doing things. I don't know if many people do that, but even though the attack is trimmed all the way down to start as quick as possible, the choir still takes a while to develop before it actually starts sounding full on. Second thing, we got the super saw, the first one, which is also Nexus. Come on. This is a high-pitched one. This is basically a first layer, which is a choir consisting of the C sharp 2 octaves higher, and we got a fifth. Sorry, this is we got it here. This is the choir, this is the chord, which basically, you know, and it changes. What I put it on is just a little bit of a boost of the high, even though it already sounds pretty harsh. I should maybe trim it down a little bit. This is a bit too high too. Yeah. You know, you can see how much low end was in it, even though there were no real low keys being played. This is the lowest key that's being played on this. And you can see how much low end there was originally. Look, this is just way too much. Without EQ, this would be such a mess. Second super saw right here, we got it's very similar to the first one. It basically just flows in the lower chords. First one was, second one is, it has this additional lower fifth in the chord. Also Nexus, we got the dance leads, Another World. Classic, stock, don't get mad. Third thing, this one still has, what does it have on the inserts? Fat filter, getting rid of the low end. We got the imager, which, you know, again, boosts up the middle bands a little bit, if we can take a look at this. It's not super stereo, but it's, you know, sort of in the middle. Squarey Harmer. This is basically like a vibrato-ish thing I like to use. I've done it in plenty tracks. Basically, all I do is whenever I hear, for example, you can hear these two working together. They're pretty massive already, but there's no middle to low end on these two tracks. You still requires this one little note, which basically just like adds to the whole harmony. And that's basically how you have to, at least how I do it. Just layer a bunch of things. This one in particular also has imager on it, exactly the same settings as on this one actually. Yep. And all it does is a harmer, which is the square more. It's just a literally square wave that I've done in harmer. Simplest stuff ever. I don't know why I've done it in harmer. I could have done it in massive. It's not like I needed transient plugs. Saw vibrato, which is another harmer for some reason. Regular saw, imager, just as in the previous one, just to keep it wide. Because originally I don't think Harmor is that wide, and I haven't even figured out how to do it in Harmor so that it's a bit wider. I'm not sure, I'm not that professional in Harmor, you know, basically I'm not even like a professional sound designer. All I do, I just have some ideas sometimes, I jump into the studio and I do them, I transfer them to through my hands onto this project to the best of my ability. So, you know, I'm just trying to put ideas together. That's all I do. Next is bottles. This is already, I explained it. It adds this little, every second bar, there's a little ending. So as you saw, these 4 super saws, well actually they're not all super saws. 2 of them are super saws. One is square, one is saw. And they all kind of work together when you listen to them as a whole. There's still obvious need of bass in there to fill up the gaps when it comes to harmonic stuff. But you can tell that you can see that they're all actually being sent to a bus, which is side chains. One of them is mellows for some stupid reason. I can't remember why. I think I was about to do a different set of side chaining just for this particular track, so I did a separate bus. But I didn't do it in the end. And I think mellows, this particular one, is being bussed again to the side chains anyway. So basically, whatever these 4 tracks, these 4 channels are on this particular bus. So what we have here is the compressor, which is automated, because I got the sidechain bus right over here. We got the automations here, and Deep Blue Glitch. This is another thing I want to talk about in a second. LFO tool bypass. This is the LFO tool. This is why these particular synths actually have that sidechaining effect without any kick on it. So there's no signal that's being sent to them. You know, normally to be able to hear this effect, you have to play the kick with it, or just at least send the signal of the kick to the sidechain bus so you can hear this. But because we have the LFO tool on the sidechain bus, this is already done for us. This is fantastic. LFO tool was introduced to me by a friend of mine called Dodge and Fusky, I think so. And it basically does all the sidechaining for you. You can program the volume of however you want it to be actually enveloped, and it's very, very flexible. You can make it as short as you want, and it works like this. You know, it's you know, however you want it. So, very useful tool. I haven't mastered it yet, so, you know, be gentle, but it's great. See, now I made it too short. That's why I think I need to prolong it a little bit. Yep, so let's move on to the bass when it comes to the drop of this track. You can hear it goes like this. It's a very simple one. There's nothing crazy going on. All it is basically saw bass sustain, which I already showed you before. This is just a saw. We got pre-exported, which I've done in Massive, I believe. Yeah, that would be the easiest way to do it, so I probably did it there. Sub bass, which is, you know, just a sub bass in Massive. Simple stuff. Actually, this is turned up by 1 octave so that it's actually audible on these speakers in the studio. But normally it wouldn't matter if, you know, if I turn these 3 hits. You know, normally I'm not sure if... Oh, there we go. We are at the perfect resonant frequency of this particular room. Anyway, this is a sub bass. Next up we got the Xilent Reese, the Xile Reese, however you want to call it. It's a massive patch that I've been trying to perfect for the past couple of years. And in this case I've actually made it very mellow, so it's not as harsh as in the other ones. It's just a steady note. That's the only thing that changes is just the cutoff, which you can see the automation of right here. The master outfill cut, filter cut, and you can hear how it goes. You can make it even more harsh if I wanted to, but it's just, you know, a bit. I think if it's at this level, I think this is pretty good. Again, you can barely hear it because it, you know, gets layered all over these, all underneath these super saws, so it doesn't really matter how much you actually. The only way you would actually be able to hear it more properly is if these were actually a bit higher like this. You know, that's the only way. But I like to keep it like this because it's not about the bass in this track, it's about the melody and about the powerness, the power of the synths, of the leads on top of it. So all these combined, basically it all sounds like this at the moment. And it continues, and you can hear these little snippets right in between these bars, which are basically as I mentioned before, I like to add a lot of different elements from all different kinds of my previous tracks and all that stuff. This is basically just some snippets I've done before. Just some, basically maybe from a sample pack somewhere, cut, glitched, reversed, pitched up, pitched down, distorted. I like that it complements these tracks in such a way that it's just, a lot of people do it, but I just like that if it separates really powerful, like super soy bits with these little very subtle glitches, and sometimes it just makes it way more elaborate, I think. And actually over here we can hear the tail of the vocal, which is leaking just in this particular part. What I love to do when it comes to these vocals, which I actually talked to before, but Vari audio. That's the thing in Cubase that basically everybody that uses Cubase probably uses. Basically it's like autotune, but it's more like human tune. You tune out basically like a track in a way that you want, and it still sounds pretty natural depending how extreme you go with it. So at this point I'm leaving it at this, and we have this effect. Because we've got all these inserts on the channel, we've got the pitch correct, which changes the timbre of the voice, which changes the format, which sounds like a little girl. And yeah, Roomworks, we've got the mod machine on the actual channel. This is the bus, obviously, I'm talking about. And yeah, just all combined together, it sounds, trying to make it sound as epic as possible. Again, vocal right here. We've got a little bit of a vibrato going on. That's why I didn't even touch Vari Audio to tune it into a straight line. As you can see, you can do it whatever you want in Vari Audio. It's literally so flexible. If you want to make a straight line, basically get rid of the vibrato, you pitch quantize basically pushes it to the nearest possible note, which at this point is actually the correct one, and then straighten pitch, which makes it a straight line. Vibrato is basically gone. But I like the vibrato over here, so I'm just going to keep it the way it was. Various different kinds of glitches when it comes to the vocal also. You can see that these came from all different sources because they're all stereo mono, and all that combines them and equalizes them together obviously is just the compression, everything that's going on in these inserts. But yeah, right before the naughty part of the drop we got this little tom roll. This is the naughty part. That's what I call it. It's basically just extreme synth recess combined together, and like not even harmonics. This could be all distorted, all out of tune, as long as it keeps it powerful. And right before it, we got this little tom roll. With the snare it goes. So basically, this is done by Halion 1, which is also standard Cubase thing. It's using a rock standard kit, which combines all different kinds of sounds. In this case it's just toms, which we've got combined with a little ride bell right here. Click, 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 and a bell. This is a little bit compressed. I think I applied just maximizer, just to keep it not going above the level. That's the trick. It's right below the limit. Whoa. The reason this just became so glitchy for a second is because D-Blue glitch is the thing I was about to talk about earlier. It's on the master channel right here on the stereo out. We got two D-Blue glitches. One of them, I believe, controls the tape stop, which I don't even know if it even appears in the track, if I even used it. Yep, used it once right here. You can see the automation of two of these D-Blue glitches right here. You got the output mix of both of number 3, which is the tape stop, which doesn't happen throughout the whole track until this point. And then output 4, which basically combines, like a little ensemble, I love this word recently, of all different sorts of glitches and reiterations of several different tracks. We got Gator here, Shuffler, and all happens every 16th of a bar, so it's pretty quick. And the only thing that the output mix does is allows it to pass through only at a certain time during the bar. For example, the first half of the bar is not glitched, obviously. This is fine. And then we're getting to this, it shuffles the bar. So basically the reason why I put it on the master is because I want everything to be shuffled. I want everything to be glitched up. Like I don't want it to keep it like a DJ friendly track. I wanted to keep some abstraction in it going on, so that even if some of the snares lose their transients at some point, I don't care. So you know, you can see over here we got just this little bit is being actually glitched up, which basically does almost nothing. I could put this whole bar to be glitched up, and it's just, you know, it would just continue this whole phrase from the glitch, which is pretty cool when you want to make something, you know, not by hand, but if you know, either lacking time or just inspiration. This is great for inspiration. This could lead you on the right track, and then if you want to, for example, correct one of these glitches, if you don't want, you know, one of these to be actually, you know, for example, done, you can just make it empty, and all these, for example, this sequence will be empty now. There won't be any glitching happening. So basically, that should inspire a lot of that definitely inspired me to do a lot of glitching by hand after I actually started using this. So when it comes to the naughty bit, we got the little mashup of different kind of Reeses. You know, they're all glitched up by the glitch that's on the master out. But unfortunately, I can't show you much of the Reeses because, as I mentioned previously, my PC was screwing up and I had to export lots of this stuff into audio. So this is a couple of, this is just a saw wave from Massive that I've just done previously, and it's all, everything that's in this sequencer right now is being affected by the deep blue glitch. So you can just hear these little snippets and clicks because of the deep blue glitch artifacts. I think this is actually, I layered it with some Massive, or maybe this is, I can't remember. So the reason why there are fades in this particular part is just that some of these actual noises, because this is just noise, right? It sounds way better if it's sidechained. The reason I did the fades instead of actual sidechaining is because the kick I'm using right here is actually a different kick on this particular part. So it was the only, like, the easiest solution for me was just to cut it, chop it, and then just fade it by myself. And actually I applied an envelope previously during the processing. So in here we've just got a layered version of this with just a different set of, I think, EQing, or isotope imagery. Yeah, we just got a massive white thing going on right underneath it, which is maybe not the tidiest way of doing things, but this is just how I do it, and I just, you know, I'm trying to implement stuff in the best way I can. So right underneath we've got the sub bass, which is, you know, where I introduced it before and normal stuff, and over here we got the Xile Reese, which I talked about earlier, and it just hits the first. It's just hitting the first kick of each bar, and it's got this little swoop on the filter on the cutoff filter in Massive, which basically swoops it up. And at the very end, right here, we got a similar thing going on. Actually, let's make it crack it up. Sounds cool. And yeah, there's also this one high Reese which I forgot to mention, which actually complements these super saws, which were a bit earlier. It's basically just a Reese I've done in Massive earlier also. It's just some simple stuff, all our bass, and it's I think it's 2 octaves higher than it usually was in some of my previous tracks a couple of years back. And I think it complements these super saws a little bit also. We've got them here. Unfortunately, this is in a bass folder. So we got the Reese here, and then the synths are right here. And if we play them together, without it, it would sound just kind of a bit more empty. You can hear this like additional grungy sound of this Reese being like pitched up. And I think that sort of concludes what this track is all about. Basically, all I wanted to do is just make it really pumping glitch hop track, which people will enjoy as if it was one of my dubstep tracks, really being really melodic and glitchy. That's what I was basically aiming for with this track, and I think that's about it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you took something out of this. You know, I'm not a master engineer, I'm just trying to do my best. But if you really learned something from this, I really appreciate it, and I'm actually glad. And be sure, if you haven't heard it yet, make sure to get my album called We Are Virtual. If it's out already, then please get it. If it's not, then please look forward to it.